know it's a hard message to drive in the UK, but we have to stop waiting for Godot in this case for Trump. I think we made a big strategic political mistake at the last meeting of the coalition of the willing in Paris last week by concluding that, now we need to know what Trump is going to say and do. I think we have to show we have the courage to, in a way, go alone and hope that along the line and along the way, the US will follow. And as long as we don't do that, basically, we're still handing the cards of European security in two men's hands, Putin and Trump. And none of them have been very reliable. And I think even Trump, I would say, supportive of European interests.
So Russian drones flying into Polish airspace put the country closer to war than at any time since World War II, according to its Prime Minister. You've been hearing about this throughout the day here on Times Radio. Up to 4 of the 19 drones that crossed the border were shot down, with Poland requesting official consultations under NATO's Article 4. The alliance's Secretary-General, Mark Rutte, says it isn't clear if the incursion was deliberate or accidental.
A full assessment is ongoing. But of course, whether it was intentionally or not, it is absolutely reckless. It is absolutely dangerous. But as I said, the full assessment is ongoing. And to Putin, I mean, my message is clear. Stop the war in Ukraine. Stop the escalating war, which he is now basically mounting on innocent civilians and civilian infrastructure. Stop violating Allied airspace. And know that we stand ready. That we are vigilant and that we will defend every inch of NATO territory.
Well, that's Mark Rutte. Our Defence Secretary John Healey is currently speaking in Greenwich. Let's have a quick listen to him.
Across NATO's eastern border, a serious violation of Polish airspace, deep enough for Warsaw Airport to be closed, and NATO jets shooting down Russian drones in what is the first defensive action of its kind since Putin launched his full-scale attack on Ukraine. And just at the same period as Russia's attacks on Ukraine intensify. And as the Prime Minister Starmer said this morning, these moves, he said, only serve to remind us of President Putin's blatant disregard for peace. So together, we, the E5, totally condemn these attacks. Russians' actions are reckless, they're dangerous, they're unprecedented. We see what Putin is doing. Yet again, he is testing us. Yet again, we will stand firm. And Defence Minister Kosiniak-Kamysz rightly returned home to Poland in the very early hours of this morning to deal with this unprecedented situation. We pay tribute to the Polish and NATO personnel involved in such a rapid and effective defensive action.
Well, that is the Defence Secretary John Healey speaking live. We'll keep one ear across that for you, but let's now talk to Fabrice Pothier, who's the former head of policy planning for NATO, now the chief executive of the Rasmussen Global Consultancy firm. Mr. Pothier, very good afternoon from us. Can we just go back to this incredibly important distinction between whether or not this act was deliberate or accidental? How on earth would anybody really go about proving that? What would NATO officials be doing right now?
Well, I think they will look at the trajectories, the kind of drones that were used. But I think there's a bigger question here, is that this is not the first time you see some Russian drone going into the NATO airspace. You have had some instances in the past in both Poland, but also Romania. And the reality is that the alliance, NATO, has been kind of hush-hush on these things or trying to keep a lead on it for fear of an escalation and for fear of bringing NATO into the Russian war in Ukraine. So Russia has not felt the cost of the previous actions, either by accident or deliberate, and therefore it's continuing. What is clear, what is possible, is that in 2 days' time you have one of the largest scale Russia-Belarus military exercise called Zapad 25, and it could be a way of probing, of testing Polish air defense response to possible Russian incursion. That does not mean Russia is planning an invasion. Russia is just playing and probing and testing, which is what it does also, as you know, in the Baltic Sea and in the Baltic aerospace vis-à-vis the NATO air policing. So I think this is not a new development. It's on a larger scale. And I think it puts the question on NATO is, are we just going to deliberate and make some statements about it? Or are we going to start putting a cost on Russia's actions in Ukraine and beyond?
Sure. So when you heard our Defence Secretary say there just a couple of moments ago, we will stand firm, he is testing us. I mean, that's really no different to what we've heard before at all, is it? That's the kind of thing you're talking about.
Yes, I think it's time to fill the gap between our rhetoric, which sounds very right, and our actions, which sometimes come short. And this is also the case vis-à-vis Ukraine. We are all saying Ukraine is part and parcel of European security. But then we also follow up saying, well, yeah, but there's a line to be drawn between Ukraine and the rest of NATO. And I think this is one of these areas that Putin enjoys testing because he likes to keep us on our back foot and he likes to show we are not as resolved and collective as it looks.
Do you think that this would have been exactly the kind of thing that might have been discussed off camera at the anti-NATO alliance in Shanghai, where we saw Putin, Kim Jong-un, Xi Jinping, Narendra Modi all holding hands and bolstering each other's positions against the current world order?
Well, I have mixed feelings about being part of these conversations, which might be quite weird because you've seen one of the conversations called off mic where they were talking about some kind of immortality of the dictators. So I think this is, I'm not sure I'm ready for that, but I would not think that they would be discussing such a tactical matter. But what they might be discussing is the bigger strategic picture, which is the anti-West or the beyond West is actually getting stronger and more unified. And look at the West, they're soft and divided. And let's keep on probing this.
So what's the thing that needs to be done to stop being soft?
Well, I think, frankly, and I know it's a hard message to drive in the UK, but we have to stop waiting for Godot in this case for Trump. I think we made a big strategic political mistake at the last meeting of the coalition of the willing in Paris last week by concluding that, oh, now we need to know what Trump is going to say and do. I think we have to show we have the courage to, in a way, go alone and hope that along the line and along the way, the US will follow. And as long as we don't do that, basically, we're still handing the cards of European security in two men's hands, Putin and Trump. And none of them have been very reliable. And I think even Trump, very, I would say, supportive of European interests.
Yep, some people might be saying that's the understatement of the century there. Thank you very much indeed for your time this afternoon. Fabrice Pothier is the former head of policy planning for NATO. Everything he said is very much echoed by James, who's messaged in this afternoon saying, let's face it, nothing will happen. We're far too wet. It's about time we kick back.